Okay, ready?
Start again.
Yeah, start again. Welcome to our Industry Insiders with Goway series in our meeting room, stroke training room, stroke studio now. The Industry Insiders with Goway is where you can hear and learn from the best in the industry. Pick up insider tips and tricks, follow the stories of proven and successful travel industry professionals, all the while journeying into the exotic worlds of Goway. Today we're talking to Moira Smith. Now Moira not only looks after our Africa and Asia departments, I don't know why I'm reading this, I know it, but I'll read it anyway. Looks after Africa and Asia departments at Goway, but she's also a resident South African, as you'll quickly pick up from her accent. And today we're talking about the Western Cape, which is in South Africa, which focuses in and around Cape Town.
It does.
Correct.
Actually, it's the fourth largest province, actually.
Right.
It's got the longest coastline in South Africa, and in my opinion, it's got an abundance of riches. I mean, South Africa has an abundance of riches, but honestly, the Western Cape is spoilt.
Right, because most people would probably hear of South Africa as South Africa and not broken down into the provinces or states?
Provinces.
Provinces. So,
Nine.
okay, so I know we're focusing on Western, so what are the other ones just for the sake of conversation?
Well, the ones that people would really know about would be Mpumalanga, which is adjacent to the Kruger National Park. There's Limpopo, there's the Northern Province, there's the Eastern Cape, which in fact is obviously adjacent to the Western Cape, and in fact a perfect combination. But we'll talk about some of them as we go through.
And where's Kruger? You might have said I missed it though. Where's Kruger?
Is in Mpumalanga.
In Mpumalanga. Okay, fine. So apart from the endless teasing that goes on between the Australian contingent here at Goway, and there are a lot of Australians, and there's a good handful of South Africans now as well, correct?
There's a good handful of South Africans. We're taking over.
Yeah, you are slowly. Which leads to my next line here. The sole defender of all things South African. South Africa and Australia do have a very long associated history, actually, political and otherwise, but also probably more prevalent these days, very avid sporting rivalry.
We would
primarily with rugby, which is the Southern Hemisphere's big sport.
As the Wallabies take on the Springboks in Sydney. Penalty. Going quickly and cleverly is Hendrickson. Waterway, LaRue, it's all South Africa. Exhibit, away for Darlinger.
Similar to American football and cricket.
Side. Oh, well, that's gone into the gap, but an extra bit of bounce again, and it catches Dean Elgar by surprise. South Africa have their first runs.
Which is, it's not like baseball, but at times it can be as slow as baseball. But they're the two biggest sporting rivalries we have. So naturally, Moira, with her professional skills looking after our African department, and Asia for that matter, being South African, as we discussed, we're here to talk about Cape Town and the West Cape. So as I mentioned before, we asked about how many provinces, states there are in South Africa. So for the sake of clarity here, and I'll throw up some imagery over this, where is Western Cape in reference to the Greater South Africa?
So of course South Africa, as its name indicates, is at the southern tip of Africa. And the Western Cape is basically the southwestern part of South Africa.
Okay, so where does it sort of start and finish? Like, is Cape Town the edge of it? Is Cape Town in the middle of it?
So it's more sort of 3/4 into it, to put it that way.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
But Cape Town certainly is the crown jewel of the Western Cape.
Right, which is actually my next question would be, the crown jewel of the region, I'm guessing, is Cape Town, correct? Which we'll explore a bit again. So what else, other than Cape Town, which is a huge draw for South Africa, let alone the Cape, or Western Cape, what else does the Western Cape have to offer?
Don, I'm so glad you asked me that. There's so much to offer. In fact, just an hour's drive from Cape Town are what we call the winelands. And in fact, there are 17 official routes. 99% of them are in the Western Cape. But the two most popular would probably be Stellenbosch and Franschhoek. Wonderful place to spend a couple of nights. And you know, you spoke about the rivalry. Well, in my opinion, one of the greatest rivalries between Australia and South Africa is the wine choices.
Yes,
and I do think that South Africa inches ahead of Australia. But
we'll
we can
agree
have
to disagree on that
wine
one. Yeah,
tasting at some point. And
we should have wine here with us today.
We should, absolutely. And then a little bit further on is a place called Hermanus, which is considered the best place to view whales from a land base. the best time for whale watching is between June and November, and it's a lovely time of the year to be there. I don't think many people know this, but in fact, South Africa has one of the smallest of the 6 worldwide floral kingdoms, but it's one of the richest.
Okay.
And it is only in the Western Cape. When I say the richest, it's got the most amount of species, and it's incredible. There's a place called Grootbos, which is where you can go and actually see the abundance of flora, which is quite incredible. In fact, from Grootbos is a wonderful place to go to Gansbaai, which is where you can go and do great white shark diving.
I was going to ask you about that, because that's probably one of the more famous symbols of South Africa and Cape Town, the shark diving.
Absolutely.
Now that's well, I know it's safe, but is it as popular as it's made out to be?
I think it is. Well, for the adventurous type.
Like for me, I'd love to do it.
So it is. It's if you're doing it from Cape Town, you do get up pretty early in the morning. It's about a 2 hours drive.
Right.
But yeah, and you don't have to get into the cage and go underneath.
Right.
What you can
watch
do is
from
you
the
can
boat.
view it from the boat. Absolutely.
Now, like, I don't believe it to be, but if you could confirm for me, it's not endangering the sharks or disrupting any of their natural behavior or anything like that. It's just they're there.
And in fact, what previously they used to do what they call chumming, which is
chumming,
actually attracting the shark by putting
Throwing
food
offal
into
and
yeah, absolutely. But now they're actually using music. I don't quite know
Seriously?
how it works, but yes, to attract the sharks. As I say, I haven't
Wow,
done it, but it's quite. But I haven't finished telling you what all is there to offer. The garden route, which is actually world famous, is from Mossel Bay to Storms River. It's fantastic. They're all sorts of wonderful towns like Knysna. Knysna, you could spend 3 nights. You could spend a lot more, but for example, in June, they have an oyster festival. Knysna is known for its oysters. There's Plettenberg Bay, which has got beautiful beaches. There's all sorts of little coastal towns that are along there. And then there's also the Western Cape, which is the western, they call it the Western Coast. And we've actually just launched a wonderful self-drive there that is 11 days, but you can take as long as little as you want.
Right, so you've mentioned like obviously a lot to do and see in the Western Cape, so, and you just quickly touched on self-drive. So this could all be connected with a self-drive?
Absolutely.
Okay. And which side of the road do they drive on in South Africa?
Like Australia, on the left-hand side.
On the
right side.
On the right side, yeah, on the right side. Yeah, on the right side being the left-hand side. Okay. So that might be a bit of an adjustment for our North American clients, but it's not a big deal. And it's safe to drive, roads are good, driving skills, something like that.
In the Western Cape, the infrastructure is excellent.
Right, so it's big, and this I guess leads to the next thing is we discussed before we went on air, is that South Africa is probably the most mixed culturally of all the other African countries due to its English, Dutch. They're the 2 main European powers in the past, correct? With, of course, all the indigenous tribes of the time. So it's very much I don't want to say English, it's not English at all, but it had that European influence in its early days. So from roads and stuff, it's a very modern, forward-moving country, correct?
It is.
Yes?
Yeah, and in fact, we have 11 official languages, including English, Afrikaans, and then there are 9 different
And
African
so just
languages.
for our audience, like English is English. Afrikaans is a combination of English and Dutch? No.
Not English, but Dutch, Fleming. In fact, there's a bit of French. It's quite a mix,
again, a melting pot of language.
Absolutely.
And then you mentioned, well, haven't yet, but there'll be all the indigenous tongues. Zulu is one.
Zulu is absolutely one. Sotho, Sesotho. There's anyway.
And I have to ask, which is the famous clicking one? Is that Southern Africa or South Africa
That's
region?
Xhosa.
Do you have Zulu blood in you?
I do.
you
I
from
guess
that part?
yes, because I mean Xhosa people are of the
you're
Zulus.
Xhosa. Oh, do that
yes,
again.
I'm
I
half
love that.
Xhosa.
Oh, do it again.
So,
Oh, I love
Oh,
that.
I can't do that.
I love that.
It's given as an exclamation mark, isn't it?
No, that's the
click.
X. So there's the 3 clicks. There's the X, which is the, and then there's the Q, and then there's the C, which is. So those are the 3 different. So that's the.
You've seduced me.
Oh, thank you.
Not that you wanted to, I'm sure.
Who was one
Was it Miriam Makeba? Who
Yes,
sang it?
the click song.
Yeah.
Igqirha lendlela nguGqugqutshwane. Yeah, that's the song.
It's a Xhosa wedding song. It comes from South Africa. Xhosa is my native language, and it's a wedding song back home where I come from. It's called by the English-speaking people the click song, because they cannot say uqongqothwane. Igqirha lendlela ke nguqongqothwane. Igqirha lendlela kuthiwa nguqongqothwane. Igqirha lendlela hema nguqongqothwane. Igqirha lendlela kuthiwa nguqongqothwane.
Xhosa, yeah. And that's in South Africa.
That's in South Africa.
Whereabouts is their kingdom or area? Or
Don't ask me that.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
You don't know, okay.
So cut that one out.
Okay, I'll cut that one out. Okay. Can you do the clicking?
I don't. I'd love to learn that.
This, because it's an amazing thing, particularly when it's sung.
Yes.
It's very
In
soothing,
fact,
actually.
there's a world famous artist called Miriam Makeba.
That's who I grabbed for
Yeah,
the,
she's really outstanding. But talking of South Africa being a melting pot, it's not just the English or the Dutch influence. Over the years, many Europeans have settled in South Africa, whether it's the Italians or the French or the Portuguese. In fact, the French were among the first in terms of the wine industry, the French Huguenots. And although, in fact, Australia and South Africa are considered new wines in terms of the greater wine landscape, in fact, the oldest wine farm in South Africa is 1685.
Wow.
So it just shows you that the wines are not that new in terms of what we would consider new. But getting back to the melting pot, so the French were one of them. And in fact, in the 16th century, the Dutch brought out a number of Malays to be servants. And the Malays have now developed this wonderfully rich culture. And in fact, one of the sights to see in Cape Town is a place called the Boerkaap. It's got these wonderful, colourful houses. And in fact, one of our most popular experiences is to do Cape Malay cooking course.
Oh, really? Okay, so obviously cuisine is a big part of an African adventure, and again on the more international cultural side. Now, I know this is old experience when I was traveling again, and it's Eastern Africa I'm referring to, but I've actually never asked you this question, if there's an equivalency in Southern Africa. There was, maybe still is, a very famous restaurant in Nairobi called Carnivores where you could try game meat. Is game meat an option in Southern Africa, be it for the globetrotter or even the average person, average South African?
It is. So venison, as we would call it, is prevalent in certain areas. In fact, in any area. Something that everybody should taste when they come to South Africa is biltong.
Yes.
And
which is?
It is, I guess, the equivalent of jerky, much nicer.
Well,
than jerky.
it's basically a dried
meat.
salted meat,
Yeah,
isn't it? Correct, yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's very popular. Well, I found it very popular in Eastern Africa, but it's equally popular in Southern.
Very much so. So to your question about the carnivore restaurant, we don't have that, but what we do have is some wonderful African experiential restaurants like Gold Restaurant in Cape Town, where you can try any amount of these kind of meats and also different Africa dishes.
Right, okay.
But venison is pretty popular. I'd say kudu is probably one of the most popular.
Kudu, okay. I tried, again, many years ago in Zimbabwe, ostrich.
Oh,
Is ostrich
one of my all-time
it's
favorites.
great meat, isn't it?
Yeah, and
awesome.
in fact, on the garden route is a place called Oudtshoorn, which is considered the feather capital of the world because of the abundance of ostrich farms.
Right.
And honestly, ostrich meat is a wonderful alternative to beef, actually.
Well, yeah.
It tastes like beef.
Yes, I learnt when I was down there. I'm surprised it hasn't taken off in North America or Australia or everywhere else, but it's a red meat.
It is.
Now, again, these facts are very old in my head, but it's something like no cholesterol, almost no fat, extremely healthy, beautiful, fantastic tasting meat.
Wonderful, wonderful. You eat it rare and it is,
yeah, it's beautiful.
so good.
And the bird itself, almost every part of the bird is used too. It's not just bred and slaughtered, that's what they are for the meat, but like the feathers are used, the leather is fantastic.
Yeah.
So from a usage point of view, for those who may be concerned, it's not just the meat, but it is an awesome meat. So obviously we're talking Africa, South Africa. Most people's first thought will be game, not to eat necessarily, as we just discussed, but to see. So in the Western Cape, Now, we discussed Kruger is not in the Western Cape, but are there safari experiences available if someone's just going to focus to the Western Cape and the Garden Route Run, which is a very popular journey, as you mentioned?
So there are. In fact, part of the Western Cape is an area called the Klein Karoo, and which is a semi-arid area. And there's one of the most popular game areas is a place called Sandbona.
I think I've been to Sandbona years ago with... when I was down there in Darwin, one of my first years at Goway.
Wow,
I think so.
I did not know that.
I
And
think so.
It's about almost 60,000 hectares, and because it is semi-arid, the concentration of game is perhaps not as abundant in places like the Kruger, but you certainly can see the big five. And it's also not just about the game; it's about the fauna and the flora and all of the other. But what is a wonderful combination is, if you do the garden route, at the end of the garden route, you join up with the Eastern Cape.
So just to clarify, the garden route starts and or finishes where?
So Storms River to Mossel Bay.
Okay, and you can do it in either direction?
Absolutely.
Self-drive, we'll get into some of this in a minute, but self-drive, group touring, all the combinations?
All of the above.
Okay. So sorry.
But at the end of the garden route is the Eastern Cape, as I was saying, and there are some spectacular game reserves there. So it's a wonderful combination in terms of combining with the Western Cape.
Right, so for a complete Southern Africa thing with game being a focus, without getting into the Kruger area, you probably do the Eastern Cape is where you probably get a better experience of game, correct?
Yes.
But if you are restricted to or just want to focus, like spend more time on wine, just do a quick sampling of game, the Western Cape will keep the Globetrotter happy. You did mention the Big Five. And so for our audience who may not know, can you name, I know you can, but can you tell the audience what the Big Five is, please?
The Big Five were considered to be the 5 most dangerous animals for the hunters of yore to hunt on foot. And they lion, elephant, leopard, buffalo, and rhino.
Now, I said this to you one time, and then I think there's a clarification. It's not the rhino, it's a specific subspecies of rhino that's in the Big Five, or is it just the rhino?
No, there are 2 main species of rhino. One is the white rhino and one is the black rhino.
And the differences are, because they're not really visually white, visually black. It's a much slighter difference, correct?
So the white rhino came from the Dutch word wijd, which is wide. And so if you look at the 2...
Wide or white?
Wide.
As in distance wide?
Yes,
versus
and so
colour white. Okay.
the one of the
So
physical
it's wide rhino?
It's actually white rhino, but it was derived from
I
the
see, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
And because if you look at the white rhino, it's got a wider
bottom jaw,
for want of a better word, whereas the black rhino is more pointed.
So that's how you tell the two?
Yeah, and to be honest, the black rhino is very skittish, prefers the habitat of thick bush, and you don't see them often, and they're more aggressive than the white rhino.
Right.
But they both are considered
So
Big Five.
Globetrotters will probably see the white rhino more because they're more, again, inverted commas for those who may not be watching. They're more social versus the black, a bit more solitude.
And of course, I mean, there's been a huge movement for Save the Rhino because, of course, they are so highly sought after in places
for
like
the rhino
the East
horn,
for the horn, yeah.
Many years ago, Goway did have on the books, on the rhino particularly, experiences where Globetrotters, now I know this mightn't be Western Cape specific, but since we're talking about this, where you could go and help local researchers, scientists, sedate, tag some of the big game. Are those options still? Is that an option in the West Cape?
In the Eastern Cape, yes.
Eastern Cape,
yeah.
But not West Cape. Okay, but it says an option. I know I've not been to Cape Town. You're going to send me there one day, I know you are. Of course. But I do know from many, many years of talking to you and research and doing training modules, etc., that Cape Town is a stunningly beautiful city.
It is.
On par with Sydney, Australia. See, told you the rivalry's there. But what I do know for a fact is that South Africans particularly are very outdoorsy people. Like us, again, there are a lot of similarities between the two countries as well, from a cultural side. Very outdoorsy, very sporting-like, adventure seeking. So there are a lot of hardcore and soft adventure options around Cape Town, like trekking to Tabletop mountain biking, the shark diving we've already mentioned. Do you want to expand on those type of options?
Beautiful trails all over the Western Cape.
Does Cape Town have, or do we have a biking tour around Cape Town?
We do on e-bikes.
E-bikes, got even better.
Or you can do the other
Yeah.
biking, but and it's a great way to actually explore the winelands.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and on either e-bikes or normal bikes. But we talked about Sydney, so I must tell you that Sydney does not have Table Mountain, which is one of the
No?
7 natural wonders of the world.
Yeah, but Cape Town
saying.
doesn't have the Opera House or the Harbour Bridge. And on we could go. You can see where it comes from. No, like Cape Town is simply stunning, and Tabletop, is...
Table Mountain.
Sorry, Table Mountain, my bad, is one of the most iconic sites when you look at a city, because almost every photo of Cape Town will have Table Mountain naturally in the background. Like Sydney, Cape Town is coastal naturally, therefore water sports, again we touched on sharks, any type of swimming off the coast is fine, safe, surfing. I know we're getting into things that the average globetrotter mightn't do, but that's still interesting to know.
I think so. Cape Town, absolutely, you can go swimming from Cape Town, but I have to tell you that the Atlantic is freezing, so you will find fantastic beaches, but not that many people in the water. As you get further north to places like Knysna and Plettenberg Bay, then you'll find people more, because that's on the Indian Ocean.
Right, so it's warmer?
Right. Much warmer.
Oh, well, interesting. So there you go. There's another little stat most people wouldn't think about immediately, but yeah, Cape or Southern Africa and the West Cape will be the meeting point of the Atlantic, the Indian Oceans.
Further south?
Further south,
it is, but it's part of the Western Cape. It's a place called Cape Agulhas.
Do we have any sailing options in and around Cape Town? Because it is a sailing...
So we do.
Lots of...
and in fact,
very famous yacht club there, isn't there?
There is,
Yeah.
and in actual fact, there's a very famous yacht race that goes from Cape to Rio, which is on the same...
Rio de Janeiro?
Rio de Janeiro, yeah.
Cape Town's at the same latitude as Rio?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Because if you look at a map, South Africa looks south-south, which it is for Africa, but yeah, I didn't know
There
that.
you go. As a Latin America aficionado.
Yes, I should have
good to
known
know.
that. I felt, See, you can always learn, no matter how many years you've been in this business. You've mentioned that the Western Cape obviously has so much to do. Wildlife, wineries, of course, biking, trekking, all that type of thing. But am I fair in saying that most people would focus more time in and around Cape Town on a Western Cape visit? Okay, so we just discussed, beautiful harbour city, all that type of thing. So what is it about Cape Town, trying to take as much bias out of this as you can, but you're not originally from Cape Town, are you?
No, I'm from Johannesburg.
Johannesburg. Did you lived in Cape Town though for a while, didn't you?
No,
you have? I thought in your professional past.
No, but I mean, I've visited it
Yeah,
very
a gazillion
frequently.
times, yeah.
I do love, and I must say, if I ever went back to South Africa, I'd probably end up settling in Cape Town.
Oh, well, okay.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay, on that, that's a good little segue. Why? Why would you choose, as a South African particularly, now coastal cities are always beautiful, but why Cape Town over Johannesburg or anywhere else in South Africa?
A number of reasons. Firstly, we've touched on the scenic beauty. Cape Town has got some of the best restaurants in South Africa. It's got so many options, whether you go up to the western coast for it's an hour and a half's drive away. If you want to go and explore the winelands, it's got, say, in terms of hiking and those kind of trails, it's wonderful. But I think the biggest thing is it's such a wonderful cosmopolitan city. It really feels like it's a European city. It doesn't feel like an African city, but it's got the African influences. It's hard to explain, but it's got a very special energy.
Is Cape Town a port of call for cruise ships?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so for our cruise agents out there, there are options with Goway to tap into the Western Cape, of course,
For sure.
and Cape Town itself, be it pre, post, or shore excursions.
Very much so.
Okay, so in all this conversation, you've mentioned that you can self-drive around, and so you can self-drive. You could do coach tours. We would overlanding, I guess. So an overland trip is basically a group of people traveling by an expedition vehicle, large or small. Sometimes camping, sometimes lodging. So there's that option as well around the Western Cape, and of course all of Africa.
We don't really do the camping option, but certainly.
Oh, you do?
No.
Is it an option if we have a more roughy-tufty globetrotter out there, or?
There's always the answer is always yes, Don.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. I fed you that one. So that's good. So, but all these little spots within the Western Cape, by we just discussed how you can get around. like how long does, if you were to choose a self-drive to get from, again, I can't remember all the names, but just to drive the garden route is how long in distance, roughly?
It's about 150 miles.
So that's all. So my point is, all these things you mentioned are very close to each other.
They are.
Right.
You typically would take maybe 3 nights to do the garden route.
Slow down and see things,
Yeah,
of course.
for sure.
So for a Western Cape only itinerary, with a good chunk of it being spent in and around Cape Town, what would be a good length of time, comfortable length of time to devote to the Western?
We've literally just launched, I think I mentioned it earlier, an 11-day self-drive, which is in fact in and around Cape Town, but up onto the western coast. In actual fact, which also people don't realize, there's a beautiful fishing village called Paternoster on the western coast. And in actual fact, there's a restaurant there that was 3 years ago was voted the best restaurant in the world. It's called Wolfgat. And
this is all the Afrikaans coming through, yeah.
And beautiful, quirky villages, and it's a lesser visited area of the Western Cape, but that could take 11 days. If you did the garden route and incorporated the West, you could really do 3 weeks.
So it's open to, like everywhere, to really explore. So 3 weeks. On average, you're saying 11 days is a good length of time for the Western Cape. That's self-driving, of course.
For sure. But to be honest, so most of our clients would spend at least 4 nights in Cape Town and potentially 2 nights in the winelands. And then if they wanted to extend to the garden route, we'd say another 3 nights.
So 10 days.
Yeah.
Again, 10 or 11 days for the best of the Western Cape.
Yeah.
And then, of course, if you really want to get into your wildlife, you then look at the Eastern and obviously probably flying up to Kruger from the Western Cape.
Yes, you would. Yeah.
Best way to connect.
For sure. And the other thing, the aspect of Cape Town specifically is the historical side. So, for example, Nelson Mandela was interred in Robben Island, which is literally 7 miles off the coast.
So I notice on your wrist, for those who are watching the video, you have a bracelet, which you mentioned before we came on air again, which is rather significant to what you're about to say. So,
so Nelson Mandela was the number on my bracelet is 46664, and Nelson Mandela was the 466th prisoner interred in 1964 in terms of Robben Island. And this has now become his charity, or the number that they use for his charitable organization for Save the Children, all sorts of wonderful things. And of course Nelson Mandela is such an icon and so much part of the South African history.
So just like most people probably will know Nelson Mandela, but just for those who may not, because we've got a lot of younger agents coming into the business now, and our history is maybe not as relevant to them anymore. Just a quick overview of who Nelson Mandela was.
So Nelson Mandela, I think, is one of the greatest statesmen of our time, and he was, as I said, interred in 1964. He was part of the ANC movement. And
now, for our audience, Nelson Mandela was a black man.
He was a black man.
Pushing back against apartheid at the time.
Yes.
We won't get into too much detail.
Yeah,
but, yep.
Very much so. And in actual fact, and it's something I only realized quite recently, he, over the years that he was imprisoned, and he was imprisoned for a long time, 27 years in fact, they offered him a release.
Yes,
if he
I
went,
read his autobiography.
Yeah, he went and retired basically to the Eastern Cape, which is where he was from, and he refused. He said, I would not go until black South Africans are on par with white South Africans.
Yeah.
So he's incredible. Unfortunately, he was only our president for 5 years.
Again, just for our audience who may not know, he was eventually released under political pressure. Apartheid collapsed. Who was the prime minister or president? I can't remember. Prime minister.
De Klerk.
De Klerk was who came to an agreement. Again, I'm
that is true.
Very broad strokes here.
De Klerk and Mandela both won the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yes.
In that year, and so he was released in 1994. And then when he became president, I think it was 1995, and he was president for 5 years.
Yeah, and very famous, obviously he's iconic in Africa, very much so obviously in Southern Africa, and a visit to Robben Island. If you don't know about the history, you'll learn about it. But anyone who may not know, or if you're passing this on to your clients, Robben Island, I guess, would have to be a must-do. Or should be, doesn't have to be, should be a must-do.
If you're interested in the history.
Of course.
And what's so interesting about Robben Island, as I said, it's literally only 7 miles off the coast of Cape Town, and you actually board the boats that take you there from the waterfront, which the Victorian Alfred waterfront is the most visited place in South Africa, just as a matter of interest. But it used to be that the tour guides that took you around were previous inmates of Robben Island.
Oh, okay.
They're getting older, so that's not always the case, but you get a great sense of what Nelson Mandela
And the
must
prison
have
is
experienced.
pretty much untouched to a degree
Pretty
from
much.
when was it shut down? I guess after Mandela was released, he shut it down?
I'm not sure the date actually, but
But was Mandela who shut it down?
No,
it wasn't him.
No, it wasn't him. But I mean, subsequently, yes.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's pretty much untouched in terms of you'll see exactly what it was, and you take a visit to the quarries, which is where he was.
Spent his time
working. Well, all the prisoners were working.
There's
in the
actually,
quarries.
I know that quite a few films have been made about him, but there's one with, I think, Idris Elba, who I don't remember the name if anyone's who's interested. It's quite a good film about Mandela, if anyone wants to know
Actually,
about
my
more about
favourite
it.
one is Invictus.
Yes. Now that goes back to the sporting aspect of it, because Mandela, as he was president at the time, he saw sport, and in this instance the Rugby World Cup, as a way to bring white and black South
Yeah.
Africa together to have a common cause to cheer about. And the film called Invictus with Morgan Freeman as
Yes.
Mandela, and God, he was just in my head. Matt
Damon,
Damon.
yeah.
Damon. I can't remember the rugby captain's name. It was an Afrikaans
Francois
name.
Pienaar.
Oh, now that's not Afrikaans, is it? Well, Pienaar sounds French, but
It's very Afrikaans.
It is
I mean,
Afrikaans.
But again, that's the French influence
again, back to
coming in.
the Melbourne
Yeah.
flight. Oh, okay, cool. So obviously then Robben Island is a focal point, the harbour itself in Cape Town is a focal point, Table Mountain's a focal point. Are there any big events in the West Cape that a Globetrotter should focus their trip to based on dates, like a wine festival or anything else like that? Or travel dates?
There are lots of events. If you start in Knysna as an example, there's the Oyster Festival, which is in June. There's also what they call the Pink Lurie, which is basically the gay pride of South Africa, and great festivities. If they're sporting minded, there are two major sporting events in Cape Town on the annual calendar, and the one is the largest timed cycle race in the world. It's I think at last count there was something like 33,000 cyclists that
Wow.
rode it. It's 105 kilometers, and it starts in Cape Town, go all the way around, including riding what they call Chapman's Peak, which is considered one of the 10 most beautiful, almost scenic drives in the world. And then you finish up in a place called Camps Bay, which is one of those beautiful beaches. The other one is the Two Oceans Marathon, which basically...
Again, Atlantic to
Yeah,
Indian or vice versa.
Absolutely. Wonderful, beautiful scenery.
On that cycle race, do you have to be a hardcore cyclist, or like they're the hardcore who go off crazy and then you can just potter around behind them
So
if you
can
chose
just
to?
put when in my youth and I was fit, I did actually do it on a bet, and it took me 5 hours to do it. I mean, the
And again, you were just pottering around, so
absolutely. I mean, the serious cyclists, I'm probably wrong, but they can do it in about 2.5 hours.
right. So if because we do have a lot of people who call us for cycling too, getaways, we could arrange that, either have bikes for them and they could just potter behind that and have feels if they're in a race.
Everything
and
is possible. The
everything
answer is always yes.
everything is always possible. We were talking yesterday actually about Rovers Rail, which is a very famous train in Southern Africa, and how they're consolidating, etc., etc. And now I know Rovers runs in northern South Africa. Are there any train journeys in and around the Western Cape?
Actually, the most popular one is, in fact, Rovers Rail, which is Cape Town to Pretoria, or vice versa. And it takes you 3 nights, and it's a beautiful, leisurely way to get from Cape Town to Pretoria if you've got the time. Fantastic. There are some other routes, longer routes. There's a 10-day one that goes through South Africa, finishing up in Cape Town, or you can start the other way.
Can you
there's
go
also
from-
a golfing route.
Oh, to touch on that again. Can you go from Cape Town by rail to Vic Falls?
You can.
Okay.
But you'd have to go via Pretoria.
Right.
And in fact, that's a very popular combination: Cape Town to Pretoria, and then Pretoria to Victoria Falls.
All on train.
All on train.
All on Rovos.
All on Rovos, but one of the most epic is Cape Town to Dar es Salaam. It's a 14-day trip.
Yeah, I've heard this one.
En route, you actually stop off and spend 2 nights at a game reserve in the Madikwe. You stop off and you spend a night in Victoria Falls, and it's just one of the best ways to travel. In fact, it used to be part of what we had called our Cape to Cairo, which was a 30-day trip. So we unfortunately stopped that because of COVID, but I am hoping one day to resurrect it.
Excellent. Now, just for our listening public and viewing public, Rovos is a 5-star option.
5-star deluxe. It's got an Edwardian feel, and it's just travel as it used to be. It's just elegant.
Now, Moira knows this because
inclusive.
she travels Rovos.
Beautiful.
She travels Rovos almost every year when she goes back. There's a very big trade industry show called Indaba, and Moira liked to sample Rovos, make sure it's up to her standards still.
Absolutely. Very important, as we do with all of our products.
Of course, we are always checking. Now, I did cut you off, but you mentioned golf options on the rail. Now,
Yes.
South Africa has also bred literally some very, very good and world-famous golfers. And golf, like Australia, is very, very popular. So apart from golf options on Rovos Rail, any golfers out there, there are lots of golf courses in the Western Cape
Beautiful
that can
golf
be.
courses, absolutely. You know, Ernie Els, who's one of the,
Yes, that's who I was thinking of.
He's got, in fact, both a winery, and then he's also put his name to a number of really, really good golf courses.
And we can get people, globetrotters, into most of these golf courses. Like, they're not closed off private.
For sure.
but-
No,
right,
absolutely.
Okay. And again, golf clubs could be rented if someone doesn't want to drag them around with them.
For sure.
So as usual, if you have an idea, your clients do give us a call. 9 times out of 10, we can get it organised for you. So we've already alluded to it. We actually stated you could devote a good 10 days, which is on average 10 to 14 days is the average globetrotting getaway, regardless of destination. Some of our clients your clients have more time, but the Western Cape could be done in that period of time.
Absolutely could be a standalone destination.
But
on
like
its own.
every country, we've hopefully educated and enlightened everyone on how much the Western Cape has to offer. But South Africa is known for Kruger, particularly.
Sure.
Game, as we discussed. And the usual thing where you're this far south, and it's a long way to get to. Actually, I want to touch on that as well. Let's touch on it right now. How do you get to South Africa?
Number of different ways. There are now direct flights from New York and Atlanta with United Airlines and Delta
To
Cape Town and Johannesburg.
okay.
Very popular is to go via Europe with any of the major airlines, and equally popular is now via the UAE, whether it's Emirates or Etihad or even Qatar. So many different ways.
And another
all roads lead to Cape Town.
Yes, Cape Town. And another option too is actually one of our staff has just left today on a trip to Africa. She's going via Addis Ababa with Ethiopian Air
That's
as
true.
another option
Also
as
very
well.
popular.
So the main gateways in are Cape Town and Johannesburg.
Yes.
So would it be fair to say most people will start Cape Town, finish Joburg, or Joburg, Cape Town, or in and out of either city?
Multiple
or multiple
combinations.
combinations.
Yeah, for sure.
So going back to my original conversation then, so you've come a lot, and again, even though the flight options are many, it's a long way.
It is.
It's a long way, no argument there. So if you're going to go that far, particularly to a beautiful continent like Africa, you want to try and do as much as you can. Now, I know we're getting off the focus of the Cape here, but I think it's worth discussing South Africa particularly. If you're there, you should probably add Kruger to Western Cape.
So let me stop you there.
Okay.
100% you should add a game experience, but it doesn't necessarily
Kruger,
have to be
okay.
Kruger. It could be in KwaZulu-Natal, it could be in the Eastern Cape, it could be in Kruger, but absolutely you want to add a game. And the beauty about the Western Cape is that pretty much every itinerary cell includes the Western Cape. But definitely you want to include a game experience or more than one game experience.
Of course, yeah, because it doesn't wear off. So having 2 or 3 game experiences will definitely show you different sides of game, because you might not always get to spot the big 5 on your first time out. Some people do. Often it's 2 or 3 attempts. And then if we have clients, or you have clients that are interested in birding,
Yes.
it's a different angle altogether.
And also different time of the year, but let's
Yeah.
not go into
Yeah,
that. But there
Yeah.
are different times to see
Different
things
things.
that you're interested in.
But my point is Western Cape plus a game experience. Being that far south, again, if you start talking different countries, Namibia is so unique and different, Botswana is as well. But I think what would be a known attraction to everyone going that far south is Victoria Falls.
Well, definitely,
Right, because it
yes.
sits on two borders, Zambia and Zimbabwe, has easy access to Namibia and Botswana,
Yes.
if anyone wants to expand their trips. But it's also Victoria Falls, right? It's
Yeah.
beautiful. So getting Cape Town, Western Cape, to Vic Falls and back again is easy by air, I would assume.
It is.
Okay.
Very, very easy. And again, what I would say in terms of Cape Town, spend an extra night, same as in Vic Falls. It used to be a 2-night stopover. Very definitely, it's at least a 3-night
Yeah, it should.
stopover.
I remember when I was overlanding as a passenger many years ago in Africa, most stops were 1 night, maybe 2, to give you a full day. But Vic Falls was always put aside to 3 or 4 back then because
Yeah.
it's also an adventure centre. So any adventure clients out there, you have one of the probably best commercial rafting trips anywhere in the world
Very
on the
much so.
Zambezi at the
Yeah.
base of the falls. You can microlight over the falls, you can bungee jump over the falls, you can play golf, you can game spot, you can sit and watch the falls. There's so much to do.
So much to do.
We'd love to plug it, but we're really about Western Cape. But
Lovely combination.
it's a lovely combination, which nice segues into our last question for you. It's a product plug time. With a focus on the Western Cape, what are probably our best selling trips that our traveling professionals out there could pass on to their clients, which hit the Cape and maybe add on Eastern and or Vic Falls?
So one of our most popular ones, which takes in Cape Town, the Garden Route, and then Eastern Cape, is Cape Highlights and Safari. Another
many
one.
days? How many days is that one?
I think it's a 9
Roughly?
or 10 day.
Okay.
Yeah. The other one that we've actually launched in honor of the Western Cape it's called Cape Safari and Wine, Cape Wine and Safari.
Okay.
And that includes a stay in the winelands as well as safari. And the safari is in actual fact in the
In
Kruger
Kruger.
area. Yeah. We've got some that just want to do Cape Town. We can do Secrets of the Cape, which is actually 7 nights in Cape Town alone. And then the wonderful self-drive that I mentioned, which goes 11 days into the Western Cape,
Right.
the Western coast.
Okay, so they're the more requested, purpose-built for the usual, I don't want to say the usual, that's not a fair term, but the most commonly requested, or in our opinion, the best way to capture the Western Cape and beyond. As we also mentioned, there are options for any cruise clients who are using Cape Town as a port of call for everything we mentioned, pre or post or during. We have lots of really good, strong day tours. I'm not sure how long a ship would call in Cape Town. I'm assuming a day, maybe overnight. I don't know.
Yeah, and what we found is some of them do finish there, and then
Or finish, yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
so then you can do longer. You could just do the Cape. You could do a lot more.
Yeah.
And just to your earlier point, actually, Don, I would say pretty much all of the products that we sell, as I say, 99% of our travelers will spend time in Cape Town at least.
Yeah,
and
without
they
a
would be
doubt.
doing themselves a disservice if they didn't.
Okay, so I don't have anything else. Do you have anything else you'd like to touch on the beauties of the Western Cape in your hometown? Homeland, sorry.
I would say that if it's choice between Sydney and Cape Town every time.
You know what the perfect thing is? Sydney and Cape Town.
Actually, now we're talking.
Yeah, now we're
we'll have to
talking.
look at developing something like
Yeah,
that.
there you go. Okay, Moira, on that note, thank you very much for your time today. Everyone out there, if you have any questions, please reach out to anyone at Moira's team. You can use agents@goway.com. You can call us directly. The phone prompts will take you straight through to our Africa department. We have many South Africans on staff, so to speak, selling South Africa and the rest of Africa. And even if they're not South Africa, most of our team have been selling the continent for
Yeah.
a long time,
Yeah, they've
really know their stuff.
Really, really expert.
Yeah, can expand on all the combinations, Western Cape and Southern Africa or South Africa with all the other countries to and from the whole thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.